says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
Hello friends, today I'll discuss life of the father of atomic bomb. Yes, he is famous US scientist Oppenheimer, who made the very first atomic bomb and tested successfully. Julius Robert Oppenheimer was born in New York City on 22nd April 1904. His father was Julius Seligman Oppenheimer, born in Hanau, Hessen in Germany in 1871. Oppenheimer is a topographic surname for someone who lived in the region of Oppenheim in the town of Hesse. His father emigrated to the United States in 1888 in a very destitute condition, but he became a successful textile importer and eventually wealthy within a few years. He married Ella Friedman there and started living in New York City. Robert Oppenheimer was their elder child. He had a brother, Frank Friedman Oppenheimer, who had important involvement with him throughout his life. Oppenheimer was meritorious from very young age. He completed 3rd and 4th grades in 1 year and skipped half of the 8th grade. He entered the Ethical Culture Society School and graduated in 1921, but he lost an academic year due to an attack of colitis. In 1922, Oppenheimer got chance to study in Harvard for chemistry, but he was become interested in physics, inspired by lectures of Professor Bijman, and soon he switched to physics. He graduated with distinction in 1925. He got chance to do research work in Christ College in Cambridge in 1924, but he wanted to work at Cavendish Lab where Rutherford worked, but he did not get approval, and finally Thomson accepted him. But he was not happy there and not performing well. In 1926, Oppenheimer left Cambridge for the University of Göttingen to study under Max Born. Finally, he obtained his Doctor of Philosophy degree in March 1927 at the age of 23, supervised by Max Born. Oppenheimer published more than a dozen papers while in Europe, including many important contributions to the new field of quantum mechanics. He and Born published a famous paper on the Born-Oppenheimer approximation, which separates nuclear motion from electronic motion in the mathematical treatment of molecules. Later, he was awarded United States National Research Council Fellowship to the California Institute of Technology, or Caltech. At Caltech, he struck up a close relationship with Linus Pauling. Oppenheimer helped him with mathematics. In 1928, Oppenheimer visited Paul Ehrenfest Institute at the University of Leiden, the Netherlands, where he impressed by giving lectures in Dutch despite having little experience with the language. There he was given the nickname OP. On returning to the United States, Oppenheimer accepted an associate professorship from the University of California, Berkeley. He then researched on various concepts of physics like quantum theory of molecular band spectra, calculation of its transition probabilities, photoelectric effect for hydrogen and X-rays, cosmic ray showers, relativistic theory of photoelectric effect, Oppenheimer-Phillips process. He vouched for existence of the positron through theoretical proof and showed that Sun was largely composed of hydrogen. In late 1930s, Oppenheimer became interested in astrophysics, most likely through his friendship with Richard Tolman, and made some new discoveries about the composition and life cycle of a star. He wrote on stability of stellar neutron cores, determined Tolman-Oppenheimer-Volkoff limit of the mass of star beyond which stars should not remain stable as neutron stars, but undergo gravitational collapse and thus become black holes. Now let us see what was the situation around the world then politically and how science was discovering new concepts and technologies in early 20th century. Einstein presented groundbreaking special theory of relativity in 1905 and general theory of relativity in 1915, defined time and space, combined mass and energy in a new way against 400 years old classical mechanics proposed by Newton. In 1913, Niels Bohr introduced the concept of quantum mechanics. Louis de Broglie published his thesis on wave-particle duality, in which he described electron as a wave as well as a particle. In 1926, Erwin Schrödinger produced the papers on foundations of quantum wave mechanics. Heisenberg in 1927 published his uncertainty principle that position and momentum of a subatomic particle cannot be known at a time. After electron and proton, neutron was discovered by James Chadwick in 1932. Since then, attempts were made to break the nucleus of heavy atoms by scientists. There are a race between US and German group of scientists to achieve this feat. Finally, nuclear fission was discovered on 19 December 1938 in Berlin by German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann. They successfully split nucleus of an atom into two or more smaller nuclei. The process released more neutrons and a very large amount of energy compared to radioactive decay. This news was published in San Francisco Chronicle on 29th of January 1939. Young scientist Louis Alvarez, working under Oppenheimer, said this achievement to him. But Oppenheimer did not believe it at all until next day when Alvarez did that in lab. Soon an idea struck him that what if we use those emitted neutrons to hit other nuclei around, and that release more energy, starts a chain reaction and produces a huge amount of energy in a short span of time. That's the idea of a bomb, the atom bomb. Now let us see what was the political situation worldwide right then. First World War was over by 1919. In 1922, Mussolini pursued an aggressive expansionist foreign policy to make Italy a world power. On the other side, Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933. After Hindenburg's death in the following year, Hitler proclaimed himself Führer of Germany and abolished democracy, and soon began a massive rearmament campaign. On 1st September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Second World War was started literally. As science had progressed a lot then, everyone was thinking about new types of ammunition based on the nuclear fission. Scientists from different countries guessed to design a bomb. In England, James Chadwick proposed an atomic bomb utilizing uranium. In December, Werner Heisenberg delivered a report to the German Ministry of War on the possibility of a uranium bomb. In August 1939, Hungarian scientist Szilard and his fellow refugee physicists Taylor and Wigner thought that the Germans might make use of the fission chain reaction to make a bomb. They were so concerned that they wrote a letter to the President Franklin Roosevelt with signature from Albert Einstein. Roosevelt ordered for a scientific committee to oversee uranium work. In April 1939, Hitler commissioned the Nuclear Weapons Program, Uran Project or Uranverein, under German scientist Heinrich Schumann and others. But they could not make any substantial progress. After each fission reaction, emitted neutrons have so high speed that they escape from uranium and don't contribute to subsequent reactions. Hence, chain reaction fails where we need moderator to absorb some energy from these first neutrons and prepare them to strike other uranium nuclei. Pure graphite works best than heavy water as moderator in this case. But Germans did not accept use of graphite over heavy water. Moreover, they could not arrange heavy water from Norway, then producer country, due to war enmity. Thus, they lost hope to build an effective atomic bomb. But US was keen to use this new technology into effect. There comes another chapter the Manhattan Project, and Los Alamos Lab. After an attack at Pearl Harbor on December 1941, US got involved in Second World War, declaring war against Japan. An all-out effort for making atomic weapons was begun in 1942. This work was taken over by the US Army Corps of Engineers in 1943. They established the Manhattan Engineer District. General Leslie Groves was appointed director of the project. He selected Oppenheimer to head the project's secret weapon laboratory. They needed a centralized secret research laboratory in a remote location, so he suggested a site that he knew well, a flat mesa near Santa Fe, New Mexico, where Los Alamos Laboratory was built. Los Alamos grew from a few hundred people in 1943 over 6,000 in 1945, all working for the same project. He was noted for his mastery of all scientific aspects of the project. Initially, he designed a gun-type fission weapon by plutonium, but there was impurity that made it unsuitable for use. So he made an spherical implosion-type weapon to sequence fissile material into a smaller and denser form to reach critical mass quickly. After a mammoth research effort, the more complex design of the implosion device that was named Gadget was finalized in a meeting in Oppenheimer's office on 28 February 1945. After the Gadget was ready to test for the world's first nuclear explosion, a site was selected near Alamogordo in the Jornada del Muerto Desert, about 56 km southeast of Socorro, New Mexico. This is called Trinity. The test was conducted on July 16, 1945 at 5:29 am that released the explosive energy of 25 kiloton of TNT.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Manhattan Project was top secret and did not become public knowledge until after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Only the Smith report, released on August 12, 1945, gave some information on the blast. In October 1945, Oppenheimer had an interview with President Harry S. Truman. He was so down morally for the death of hundreds of thousands of innocent people that he said he had blood on my hand. Truman got angry and said it was his own decision and Oppenheimer had nothing to do with it. After the war was over, Atomic Energy Commission was established by President Harry S. Truman in 1946 for further progress on research and development of nuclear weapons. Oppenheimer was appointed as the chairman of its General Advisory Committee. He advised on a number of nuclear-related issues including project funding, laboratory construction, and even international policy to stop arms race, though the GS's advice was not always heeded. The first atomic bomb tested by the Soviet Union in August 1949 came earlier than Americans expected. Everyone in US started debating over whether to develop a more powerful nuclear fusion-based hydrogen bomb, then known as the Super. Oppenheimer argued against continuing work on the Super at that time. To counter the possibility of the Soviet Union developing a thermonuclear weapon, the GSE suggested US could have an adequate stockpile of atomic weapons to retaliate against any thermonuclear attack. In January 31, 1950, Truman, who initially disagreed to develop the Super, made the formal decision to do so. Oppenheimer and other members who had opposed the hydrogen bomb decision left the GSE when their terms expired in August 1952. There, Oppenheimer's era of atomic bomb in US ends. In November 1945, Oppenheimer left Los Alamos to return to Caltech, but he felt uninterested in teaching. In 1947, he accepted an offer from Louis Strauss to take up the directorship of the Institute of Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. Now we'll see his private and political life. In 1936, Oppenheimer became involved with Jean Tatlock, a student at Stanford University School of Medicine, but they broke up in 1939. In August of that year, he met Catherine Wenning, a radical Berkeley student and former Communist Party member. She finally divorced Harrison and took Oppenheimer as a fourth husband on November 1, 1940. Their first child, Peter, was born in May 1941, and the second, Catherine, was born in Los Alamos, New Mexico, on December 7, 1944. Oppenheimer again revived his affair with Tatlock. In a trip to California in June 1943, he visited Tatlock, who was suffering from depression. Tatlock committed suicide on January 4, 1944, leaving Oppenheimer deeply grieved. He never openly joined the Communist Party of USA, but he gave money to leftist causes. He also had an interest in learning languages and learned Sanskrit under guidance of Arthur W. Ryder, professor of Sanskrit at Berkeley in 1933. He eventually read literary works such as the Bhagavad Gita and Meghdut in the original Sanskrit. He later cited the Gita as one of the books that most shaped his philosophy of life. He wrote to his brother that the Gita was very easy and quite marvelous, and called it the most beautiful philosophical song existing in any known language. Now comes the darkest chapter of his life, security hearing. The FBI had been following Oppenheimer since before the war, when he showed communist sympathies as a professor at Berkeley. The issue fueled by his once well-wisher Louis Strauss, then AEC commissioner. He had having resentment against Oppenheimer both for his activity in opposing the hydrogen bomb and for his humiliation of Strauss before Congress some years earlier. On 21 December 1953, Strauss told Oppenheimer that his security clearance had been suspended. Hearing followed in April-May 1954. Many of his colleagues, students, friends, and family members had to attend the hearing in different occasions, but as it was planned, Oppenheimer's clearance was revoked one day before it was due to lapse. Now, after all these years, only on December 16, 2022, United States Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm vacated the 1954 revocation of Oppenheimer's security clearance. After the devastating hearing was over and he was removed from any policy-related bodies, Oppenheimer used to live for several months of each year on the island of St. John in the US Virgin Islands. He occasionally got invited to deliver lectures in universities. He lectured titled Prospects in the Arts and Science for the Columbia University and attended on bicentennial radio show on the topic Man's Right to Knowledge. He delivered the Red Lectures on the BBC in 1953. Oppenheimer was a chain smoker and was diagnosed with throat cancer in late 1965 and died at his home in Princeton, New Jersey on February 18, aged 62. For his services as director of Los Alamos and successful making of atomic bomb, Oppenheimer was awarded Medal for Merit by President Truman in 1946. That was highest civilian award then. In September 1957, France made him an officer of the Legion of Honor. President John F. Kennedy awarded him the famous Enrico Fermi Award in 1963. Oppenheimer was plagued by periods of depression throughout his life. He once told his brother, "I need physics more than friends." Hans Bethe said of him, probably the most important ingredient he brought to his teaching was his exquisite taste. Oppenheimer was nominated for the Nobel Prize for Physics 3 times in 1946, 1951, and 1967. but never won. But there are many scientists, including his students, won the Nobel Prize working on his theories like Willis Lamb, Carl Davis Anderson, and he got featured in Time magazine cover of 1948 issue and again in 1954 when he lost his security clearance. There have been published many books based on his life, like the famous one American Prometheus in 2005 by Kai Ward and Martin J. Serwin, which won the 2006 Pulitzer Prize for biography or autobiography. There have been some TV shows broadcast like 1980 BBC TV serial Oppenheimer, The Day After Trinity, a 1980 documentary about Oppenheimer, and the latest American film Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan, praised by critics. But over all the achievements and defamation, what paid him most? The famous tagline from US people is the father of the atomic bomb.